right, so today we're in Peace in a World Not His, Part 8. Peace in a World Not His, Part 8. And this is, again, launched out of John 14:27, when Yeshua said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, but I do not give it to you as the world gives, but do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be afraid. And we're dealing with the idea of being afraid right now, because he says that peace and being afraid do not go together. He said, I don't give you as the world gives to you. And we talked about that over the last 7 parts, that he allows us to go through situations that teach us how to have peace. He doesn't just give it to us, okay? Some of you are thinking, oh, but that would be so nice if he would. It doesn't work that way, all right? Okay, so we're going to begin in Deuteronomy chapter 20, Deuteronomy chapter 20, and we're going to actually cover a verse that I covered last time that wasn't in my notes, but remember we looked for it a little bit, which was talking about the person who could have been contagious with his weakness of heart. But I want to kind of get the full context of that, starting in verse 1, and so we're going to cover that here. Deuteronomy chapter 20, and in verse 1. Now, we're looking at not being afraid. Now, we're not going to get totally into that because we have a fear of Yahweh teaching. We have other things that we have that will go along with that. But remember, this has to do with fear and peace, or being afraid and peace, and how they either do or don't relate. And obviously, they don't relate. When you go out, verse 1, to battle against your enemies, and shall see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim, is with you. Okay, so let's start right there. I'm going to actually stop along the way this time. I'm not just going to read the whole thing first. I'm going to stop along the way. So he says, look, when you go out to battle against your enemies, we are always looking in these things for how does this apply to me today, or how can I apply this today? All right, so we're not talking about literally gearing up to go to war. We're not talking about putting on your armor and getting ready to literally go into a physical battle. We deal with our enemies in more verbal, emotional, in terms of conflict. Words become the weapons, not knives and swords and shields and guns or whatever, but it's words. So when you go out to do battle against someone who's treating you like an enemy, that's what we're going to use the metaphor here. When you are going to get into a confrontation or a discussion or something that could turn into a battle. And you know what it's like. You have family members, you know that it's not going to take much and it's going to be a verbal battle. You're going to be going to war verbally with these people. He says, when you do this and you see, this is the part, you see that they're well armed, and it seems like the odds are overwhelming. You see them, you see chariots and horses and more numerous than you. You feel like, I'm outnumbered. How am I going to win this? How can I survive this battle? Because all of a sudden, it's not just you and your family member, it's you and your whole family that they've now gotten to come up against you. And so it's not just a one-on-one thing, or it's everybody at work, or it's everybody somewhere else, or at least it feels like it's everybody. We do tend to globalize, and that's a problem too. We tend to say all and every when that's really not the case. It's just a lot. So it feels like all or every. But what the point is here is when you feel outnumbered and overwhelmed and you're going to battle, he reminds us, he says, don't be afraid. For Yahweh, your Elohim, who brought you up from the, whatever it was your Mitzrayim, your Egypt, who brought you out of your bondage, is with you. Now, it starts off by saying he's with you. It's not saying right up front here, he's just going to handle everything. You're going to have to still go into this battle. He said, but he is with you. So what's to be afraid of? But. He's with you. But there's more elements to this, okay? He says, first of all, do not be afraid when doing battle against what appears to be overwhelming odds. Yah is with you. Next point, verse 2. And it shall be when you draw near to the battle that the priest shall come and speak to the people and shall say to them, Hear, O Yisrael, you are drawing near today to battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint, do not fear or tremble or be afraid before them. For Yahweh your Elohim is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. Okay, so the next point here is, and in today it functions a little differently. Then it was the nation of Israel about to physically go up against an enemy, and the priest came to them and said, hold on, just remember when you go to battle, Because you got to remember, in those days, battles didn't just happen generally that spontaneously. You approached, you saw the enemy, they saw you, you prepared, you camped out, then you came to the battlefield, and then you went to war. Okay, it wasn't just like something that's sprung on you very often. I mean, you see it happening occasionally, these ambushes and that kind of thing. But generally, when it says going to battle, they know you're there, you know they're there. And so the priest would come and say, okay, this is like the coach coming into the team before going out to the game, saying, okay, look, you're about to go to war, you're about to go to battle. Remember, do not be afraid. Yah is with you, and he's going to go before you, and he's going to help, and he's going to save you. He's going to fight for you against your enemies. And so what we have for today is that the person in the ministry, the leadership person, is going to encourage you to not let your heart faint, nor fear or tremble, or be afraid before the thing that you're facing. In other words, but this only happens, by the way, if you contact them. If you don't call me, if you don't call your leadership, if you don't call for help, you're not going to be able to get this encouragement. The priest here is in the camp already. He sees them about to go to war. He knows the battle is happening. And then he goes and he says, hey, just remember, this is what's really going on here. Now, because we're not in a camp like that, and the ministry can't know necessarily all the things you're facing, you will need to go to the person who's in the role of priest. What's the person who's in the role of priest? Not the person that's doing sacrifices or running the temple. It's the person who is serving Yah on your behalf. And so in that case, it would be ministry today, the Melchizedekian more form of ministry today. And so as we're looking at that form, that would be somebody like myself, the leader of a congregation that you're at. If there are elders, it would be one of the elders, somebody like Rabbi Tom. And so here you would come and then you would say, this is what I'm facing. And you should expect the priest or the ministry person to then say this kind of encouragement. Don't be afraid of it. Yah is with you. Yah is going to help fight the battle for you. He will give you the words. There's other places in the New Testament where Yeshua says, don't worry what you're going to say. Your Father will give you the words to say when you go into a situation of confrontation. So the metaphor here is confrontation in what looks like overwhelming odds. So remember, we're talking about peace in a world not his. In a world not his, you are going to run into confrontations that appear overwhelming on a regular enough basis. In those situations, you have to figure out how to have peace in that. Well, you know what? If you know he's with you, that should help give you peace. If you know he's fighting for you, that should help give you peace. If you know there's a leadership that is encouraging you, that should help give you peace. Continuing, so in verse 5 he says, and the officers shall speak to the people saying, who is the man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. And who is the man who has planted a vineyard and has not begun to use it? Let him also go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man should begin to use it. And who is the man who is engaged to a woman and has not taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her. And the officer shall speak further to the people and say, now, okay, so you just had a list of 3 things before we get to this 4th one. What are these things that are going on? If you're going to go to battle, you need to go without distraction, without anything that is pulling you in a different direction. You have to be fully committed. You know, the Vikings would burn the ships. That's motivation. In other words, you have to know when you're going to battle that you have no thought of running away. There's no thought of backpedaling, whatever. And so they would go and land someplace, burn the ships, and then they say, okay, you got no choice. You're going to have to win because there's no place to go. There is no retreat. You're not going anywhere except forward. So if somebody just built the house, they might be thinking, well, you know, I need to make sure nothing happens. I can't really put all my effort in here because I got to go back to the house. Or the vineyard, or the wife that I just married. And so there are all of these things in there that would obviously be distractions. Now, they use the nice language to say, we don't want to call you a distracted coward or some other thing. So we're going to say, lest somebody else go and have it, well, we should say, hey, you should go back and take care of that. But this is all about the contagion of the fear being contagious among the other people. Having something that would split your focus. You are to love Yahweh your Elohim with all heart, mind, being, effort, everything. And you can't do that and go forward if you're still thinking about, but I may lose this or I may lose that. What does that look like today? You bought a house or you built a house and you're going through that process, and now your boss says, well, your job is in jeopardy if you don't come and work on Saturday. And you're thinking, but I can't risk my job. I just built this house. Or you say, well, that's okay. If I lose the house, I lose the house. See, he knows that the people here are not strong enough to handle certain things. So he says, if you're in any of these categories, then we need to figure that out, because if we're going to battle, the battle will be lost if we have people that are not going to go forward with a full commitment and conviction. So that's the important part here. Then we see a fourth thing that's brought up, because it says, and the officers in verse 8 shall speak further to the people and say, look, who is the man who is afraid and of tender heart? Let him go to return to his house, lest the heart of his brothers faint like his heart. So now he's explaining the problem. Here, the part 4, or step number 4, mentions really the problem of the other 3. If you're distracted, if you're worried, if you're afraid you're not going to get home again, you're not going to fight like you need to fight. You're going to be distracted. See, that's the hardest thing in this life, in this walk, is distraction. That's Hasatan's main tool, by the way. You want to worry about what Hasatan really is doing? He is very happy to give you loads of distractions, overload you with distractions, so you do not focus on the things you need to focus on. All right? Now, so he warns us in verse 8 that these things can be contagious. In verse 9 it says, and it shall be when the officers have finished speaking to the people that they shall appoint commanders of the divisions to lead the people. Okay, so here's your process. Number 1, he says, you're going to face battles that seem overwhelming to you. And he tells you, please don't, he doesn't say please, he says, tells you, he commands you, don't be afraid. You have a leadership that will encourage you not to be afraid. And beware of those that are among you that could be contagious. Be aware that there are those that are among you that you have to be aware of. This is almost like the COVID-19 we're going through. It's not just about you being aware of your behavior, how it can affect other people. If you are susceptible, you need to be aware of that possibility of you catching a spiritual disease or a character disease or some other infectious thing that will cause your behavior to go in a wrong direction. Remember, the whole point is transforming into the behavior and the integrity and the personality and the approach that is the mindset of Yeshua. And by personality, I don't mean like from your personality side, but I'm saying the way to approach life. Now, other people can influence you also in your integrity or lack, in your behavior, good or bad, in your approach, good or bad, in your mindset, good or bad. So it's a warning and instruction, and then he says, look, in order to help, there will be officers and commanders to lead and to encourage as well. This structure does not all of a sudden change when Yeshua shows up, ends up dying and resurrecting and being at the right hand, and then all of a sudden, Yahweh's way of structuring things just goes out the window. There are ministries out there, lots of them, try to teach that. But yet, when you find yourself in these positions, if you avail yourself of the structure does give you a restoration of peace. There is peace that you can find in knowing that there's leadership that's encouraging you, reminding you that Yah is with you and doing battle for you and with you. There is structure in terms of leaders, of commanders, of divisions that will help in the different areas of battle. And so we have that encouragement here in Deuteronomy chapter 20. Peace, again, is coming from you trusting in and recognizing that there's structure there to keep you safe, so there is no reason to be afraid. This is what's being laid out here. But as we go into the next piece, and this is going to be a big piece of today, it's going to be all about the spying out of the land situation. The big problem there we're going to see, just like here, is the contagion of fear. the contagion of not trusting what Yah said and the people that are put in position to do it. And actually, there was a failure of leadership. 10 out of 12 failed in leadership's responsibility and role. So this is really important. Let's go to Numbers chapter 13 and look at this. In Numbers chapter 13, Bimidbar, Numbers chapter 13, and we're going to read a good chunk of this chapter. Actually, we're going to read almost all of it and almost all of 14 as well. I mean, there's so much here that we need to understand. Let's begin in verse 1. We're not going to read the names of all of the people starting in verse 4, but we are going to understand what they're dealing with. So verse 1 for context of chapter 13. Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am given to the children of Israel. Send one man from each tribe of their fathers, each one a leader among them." So there was leadership, and these are people that were recognized and respected by each of the tribes. And so he selects out the 12 men to go, and we see them listed here. Now bear in mind that the leadership was being sent by Yah to spy out the land. And by the command of Yahweh, Moshe sent them from the wilderness of Paran, this is verse 3, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. So some of you may think, well, why do they need to spy out the land? Why didn't they just go? Why would Yahweh tell them to spy out the land? Well, because he knew they had a heart issue that needed to be addressed. And he wanted to show them the heart issue before they actually went and had the heart issue really cause a problem. So he said, take your leaders, because I want you to see from a leadership point of view, the people cannot do what the leadership doesn't do. Okay? It used to be in MLMs, it always says the speed of the group is according to the speed of the leader. Okay, and all those multi-level marketing. It's the same thing in life. The leadership is got to set the pace. I used to teach with personal training. I used to, believe it or not, I taught things like aerobics. You know, when you're teaching a group of people to do something, you're physically having people do with you, they're only going to do a percentage of what you do at the level that you do it. So I know this is an impossible thought, but if you wanted them to do 100%, you had to give 110%. You can't give 110%, but you understand what I'm saying? But if you put in a lackluster effort of 80%, you're only going to get about 60% out of the people. If you want the people to not be afraid, you have to not be afraid. This is part of the reason why I give a little bit of grief to some of my colleagues that are out there selling all their stuff, because after all, that shows a lack of faith, in my opinion, that people would support what they're doing without charging for it. And so that seems to be a problem with their ministries to a certain degree, that you're teaching the people that they need to have this faith, and then you don't demonstrate it in that way. That's why we put all of our stuff out for free. Because we have faith that if Yah wants us to continue, he will inspire those who are receiving to support that. Which is why we never solicit for it. Now, the leaders are being judged first, then the people here. That's the way it always is. And so he says, go ahead and select out leaders, send them into the land. Let's see how they respond, knowing full well that they will be a microcosm of how the whole group would respond if we send everybody in. So 10 out of 12, we know, respond badly. Imagine if the 2 to 3 million Israelites went in and 10 out of 12 Israelites responded like the leaders did, percentage-wise, out of 2 to 3 million people. I mean, that would have been really not good, as I guess they would say. This would not be a good situation. We got to deal with the heart issue. So he picks the 12, and now we drop down to verse 16. So these are the names of the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land, and Moshe called Hoshea the son of Nun, Yehoshua. So right before they went, he actually changes Hoshea's name to Yehoshua. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up here into the south and go up to the mountains and see what the land is like, and the people who dwell in it, whether strong or weak, whether few or many, or whether the land they dwell in is good or evil, whether the cities they inhabit are in camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests there or not. And you shall be strong and bring some of the fruit of the land, Now the time was the time of the season of the first fruits of grapes. Now, so he's telling them to go and spy out literally the things that would normally scare the you-know-what out of the rest of the group. But he also said, let's see the good stuff too. Go and see if Yahweh indeed has told you the truth about them. Because remember, they're still building their trust, their emunah relationship with Yahweh. I mean, they came out of Egypt. They haven't been with Yahweh that long. And he's saying, okay, now go and spy out the land and see what it's all about. And so here they are in the journey. Their relationship with Yahweh is very short. It's very brief at this point. And he says, well, let's go see, how this all plays out. So verse 21. So they went up and they spied out the land from the wilderness of Sin as far as Rechav, near the entrance of Hamath. And they went up from the south and came to Hebron and to Achiman and to Shishai and to Talmai. The descendants of Anak were there. Now Hebron had been built 7 years before Soan and Mitzrayim. So he's giving people who from that time would have understood these things, that it would have made sense to them, right? And now it did mention really, just a little hint, the descendants of Anak were there. And so we have to understand the Anakim were a scary group of very large people. Okay? And they came to the Wadi Eshkal and cut down from there a bunch with one cluster of grapes, and they bore between two of them on a pole, also of the pomegranates and of the figs. So that must have been a pretty big sized cluster of grapes to put on a pole between two people. Okay? He says that place was called the Wadi Eshkal because of the cluster which was the men of Israel cut down from there. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they reported to him and said, okay, now this is where it all goes south. All right? We went to the land where you sent us, and truly it flows with milk and honey, and this is the fruit. That should have been the end of the conversation. Yah told us it was great, and it's great. Let's go. See, you got to remember where your mind is at, where your heart is at, as you approach something, is going to filter how you receive it. For example, you go and ask 5 or 6 people that went to a party with, let's say, 100 people were at the party, you might find totally different descriptions of what that party was like, depending on where that person was at before they even went. If their mindset was just to go and have a good time and they were just going to enjoy, and they were sure then they probably went and had a good time and enjoy. If they were sure that it was going to be lousy and they were going to run into people they didn't want to talk to, they're going to see what they want to see. Because that's what they're looking for. If you were looking for the giants and the walls and all that other stuff, which we're going to hear about in a minute, you would certainly find them. It was there. But if you were thinking that that's not my problem, okay, that's Yahweh's problem. He said he would deal with that stuff. But you were looking for the land flowing with milk and honey and all the fruit and all that stuff, well, you'd find that also. And then you have to inside decide how to balance those things. Because see, all of the things that you would ask people about probably happened at that party. You just ignored the stuff that wasn't important to what you were looking for and focused on what you were looking for that was there. So the person that had a lousy time ignored the fact that they could have had a good time and probably did have a good time at some moments of the party. The person that was looking for a great time ignored all the parts that weren't exactly ideal in the way they wanted it, but decided that that's what they saw. All of it probably happened. So yes, they start off by saying, well, yes, there is a land there that flows with milk and honey, and its fruit is there, etc. But, but. Okay, remember we talked about in the past other times, we talked about the sheep and the goats. And so one of the goats is the but. Okay? You want to know if you're leaning towards becoming a goat? If you use the word but a lot. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's true, but. Okay? But the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are walled, very great. And we saw the descendants of Anak there too. The Amalekites dwelled in the land of the south, while the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwelled in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the banks of the Jordan. They're all panicking now. The Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the sons of Anak, great walled cities, blah, blah, blah. So Caleb silenced the people before Moshe. Because now, bear in mind, he didn't just silence the guys who were talking. The people, I'm sure, were like starting to freak out. And Caleb gets up there and he says, he silences the people before Moshe. He says, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are certainly able to overcome it. Can you imagine? One guy, a bunch of people are already sitting there going, blah, blah, blah. The people are already buying into it and panicking in fear. The peace is gone. Okay? And here's Caleb standing up and saying, what? Let's go. Let us go up at once and take possession. For certainly we're able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than us. See, where are you in your life with this? Remember we read in Deuteronomy 20, you're facing a situation. It looks overwhelming. All evidence points to you are not able to handle this thing. Remember, Yahweh tells us, though, through the scriptures that nothing will come upon you that you're not able to handle, and without a way of escape being provided, etc. You just don't know that you are okay to handle it, that you're prepared, that you have the things that you need. The problem is inside you. He allowed you to be there because he knows you can handle it. You, however, are in a test like they were in a test, and you're failing the test if that's the way you respond. Life is exactly this. You find your situation, you try to do a little bit of recon, you try to see what's going on, you're like, I'm never going to make it in this. You call me, you're all panicked. Or you don't call me and you're all panicked, which is worse. And then I try to explain to you, why are you afraid? Why are you panicked? Because it looks overwhelming. Because in the past, now these people just came out of Egypt, but they'd seen wars and battles in Egypt. They'd seen peoples fight against each other. They know how it normally works. The bigger group wins. The better equipped group wins. The better trained group wins. That's the way it normally works. Your army has 100,000, mine has 40,000, you're probably going to win. Your guys, are well trained and have armor and all that stuff and weapons that are really well made. We're sitting here with our clothes on our backs and our implements from like harvesting, our sickle and our hammer and our how is that going to work? Okay? But he's saying those things are not relevant here. Those are just appearances. Don't go by appearances. Go by the word of Yah. Go by what he says. So Caleb tries to silence them, and the men say, oh no. And verse 32, and they gave the children of Israel an evil report of the land which they had spied out, saying. Now, it wasn't an evil report. It's a terrible translation. They were slandering. They were exaggerating and misrepresenting to slander what Yah had said. They gave an evil report which they had spied out the land, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land eating up its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. Well, that's not true. They weren't all giants. And we saw there the Nephilim, sons of Anak, and of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers and like how we would see a grasshopper, they saw us. We were that small to them. Like grasshoppers in our own eyes, so we were in their eyes. And so this is slander, not because it's not true that these things physically were there, but because it goes against Yah telling them, I'm sending you into a place that I'm going to send you. I said to you, I'm going to battle for you. I've told you these things all along on the journey. I didn't send you there to figure out whether or not you should go in. I sent you there to figure out whether or not I want to let you go in. I'll say that again. He didn't send them to figure out whether or not they should go in. He was trying to figure out whether or not they were ready to go in. And not ready physically, but emotionally, mentally to go in. Spiritually, were they ready to go and trust him in those battles? The answer was, at this point, it looked like no. The leadership certainly wasn't. Now, the people hadn't responded yet, and we're going to see their response here. We get into chapter 14. Then all the congregation, verse 1, lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and all the congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, or if only we had died in the wilderness. What is wrong with these people? Oh, don't go there. You're exactly like them. So your first thought is thinking, what is wrong with these people? Go to listen to the teaching. What are you thinking? Because that's exactly why I made that teaching, was because you'd read this stuff and you think, what are they thinking? Well, you know what happens. That's why you're thinking it. You're not there. But what about the situation in your life that you're facing that's kind of like this? Yahweh's told you to keep Shabbat. Your boss tells you to come in and work. Okay, you're going to keep Shabbat or you're going to work? Oh, but I'll lose my job. That's what it looks like to you. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll lose your job and get something better. Maybe you'll be honest with yourself and realize you hated the job anyway. I cannot tell you how many people in the year, I've been doing this a long time, and in the years of people telling me how much they hate their job, they wish they could do something else, but as soon as that job is threatened, all of a sudden they are trying to protect that job. Oh, I love my job. Oh, I don't want to lose my job. Oh, what? Come on, really? And you know, either you yourself or you know people that have said exactly those exact same things. It's incredible how that plays out. You whine and whine and whine, and then finally you get what you asked for, and now you don't want it. Oh, they were lovely and happy in Mitzrayim. Oh, no, we should go back, or we should have just died there, because that was better than the possibility of a land flowing with milk and honey. But it's scary. A lot of you face this battle on a regular basis in your careers. Yahweh has made it clear to you, life has made it clear to you that you cannot pay your bills and get what you need done in life with the job that you have or the career you have. Oh, but changing jobs is scary. Or Yahweh has shown you that you're never going to make the living you need to make where you live, so you have to move. Oh, but that's scary. I don't want to move. That's uncomfortable. That's unknown. What if I don't like where we go? What's going to happen? I'm kind of comfortable here in my suffering and pain. But are you not trusting him? Why aren't you trusting him? I have had conversation over the years with people, not as much recently, but over the years for sure, with people that were living in places that were absolutely, for what they did for a living, and they could have made good money doing what they're doing, it was that work was not available where they were. So they would have to drive 3 or 4 hours to a place, stay there for the week, overnight, do the jobs. I was like, move. Oh, but. You have a choice. Change what you do or go to where the work is. But you don't want to do either of those. You know why? Because, please don't get mad at me. Please. We have a fear that causes us to choose the way of least resistance, which is a sort of a lazy trait. I don't want to call you lazy, because this is why I've got to be careful here. Because some of you work really, really hard at the thing that's producing not enough. But the fear is causing you to be lazy about the effort, because you don't want to make the effort to do the change. Oh yeah, you work hard at the thing that's producing not enough. And you put in the hours, maybe 2 or 3 jobs doing the thing that produces not enough. But you won't make the effort to change. Well, why don't you develop a side hustle? Why don't you get a side job of some sort? Well, I don't know nothing about that, and okay. So what? Why don't you do it anyway? Well, I don't know anything about it, and it's scary, and it's this, and it's that. I don't know. Every day somebody's doing exactly that, and they didn't necessarily know any more than you did before they started. Well, it might fail. Oh, I'm sure it will. You may have to do 3 or 4 of them before you get one that works. You know why people are more successful than most people that are unsuccessful? Is because they have been willing to fail more than you have. I mean, go read every success story you can find, and you will find that they were willing to do stuff you would never have been willing to do in terms of massive, embarrassing failures. Businesses that were started, things that were done that failed miserably. Even being successful and making millions and then losing all of it. Tell me that doesn't get you some humiliation. And then having to rebuild it. Okay? This is the whole thing, is that, are you afraid? Are you hearing an evil report? What is happening here in your life? Okay? Because the people are all screaming and crying and weeping and say, oh, it's better if we go back there. And then they say in verse 4, and they said to each other, let us appoint a leader and let us turn back and go back to Mitzrayim. Let me deal with something here, but I don't know how much further we're going to get in this chapter because I want to deal with something very important. Okay? This whole thing of Lashon hara. Lashon is the tongue, hara is evil tongue. What you see the leadership here doing is Lashon hara. They're actually spreading things in a gossipy, rumorish, sort of slanderous way that's not the correct information, and it's specifically to influence people. The key to Lashon hara is the idea of you're trying to influence people in a negative way. Okay, Lashon hara is not when you call me or the leadership and say, I'm having a problem with somebody, and you tell me who it is and you explain the problem. That's not Lashon hara. You're seeking counsel on how to fix something. But when you talk to your friends about it and other people about it, to turn people's hearts and minds against that person, to see that person in that negative light, now you're doing Lashon hara. If you want to receive Lashon hara, best way to do it is to go into leadership position. And you will be spoken evil about or slanderously about or misrepresented absolutely by some people almost immediately. So there's two sides to this that I want to make sure that we're learning, because we're supposed to have peace in a world not his. One of the quickest ways to lose your peace is to be on either side of this problem in a wrong way. Pay attention. The first side of it is the spreading of it, because you are stepping up essentially in a leadership position where you're expecting people to listen to you because you represent the learned position where you have information, etc., about something, and you want to influence others. Leadership is about influencing other people, positively or negatively. That's what leadership is. It's having a position of responsibility that may influence other people. Can we agree to that? I didn't say manipulate, although that could be a negative influence. I didn't say take advantage of, although that could be. In other words, it's influence, good or bad. All servants, all leaders, all despots, and all terrible leaders are all doing one thing. They're influencing people in some way. Okay? Now, Lashon hara has the intent of influencing people negatively about another person. In this case, they're negatively trying to represent the leadership, Moses and Aaron, and the Creator, who told them that they're supposed to be going into this land and possessing it and dispossessing the peoples that are there already. Nobody ever told them the place was going to be vacant and they could just go in and possess it. There's already going to be people living there. Now, the other side of this that you need to watch out for is you don't want to be the ones doing the gossiping, the slandering, the misrepresenting, with the desire to influence others in the same direction. The other side of it is, what do you do? Remember, the people here are listening to these leaders. How do you respond to that type of information? You know, the people had a choice to listen to Caleb, listen to Joshua. Now, we don't see Joshua speaking here, but we know both of them said basically similar things. They took the stand that, hey, we need to go in there. Are you going to listen to the 2 or the 10? Well, you know, it seems like the majority would be correct, and I would listen to the abundance of the council. And you need to do more vetting than that. You got to do more vetting than that. And I'm going to address this from a local and an MTOI point of view. Absolutely, every one of you at some point, if you haven't already, most of you already have, you will be facing stuff being said about this ministry, its leadership, myself and others in the leadership, etc. And you're going to have to decide what you do with the information and also what you do with the person spreading the information. It's not my problem, it's not my job. Because I only hear about it after. No, they're not coming to me. They're spreading it to others about me or about the leadership here. And by the way, it's not always just me. It could be anybody here. And again, I'm not saying this because I want to stop something specific. There's always something. So this is not in response to anything in particular. It actually is the section that we needed to go to today, and it deals with the most abundant peace stealer in the assembly today. And that is this kind of stuff. It's the talk that's going on behind the scenes, the chatter, the slander. And the problem is that you have a responsibility when people come to you to stop them in their tracks and ask questions before they go further. Like, for example, the question of, have you addressed this with the person who you're telling me about? If not, you go do that first. I don't need to be involved. You go address it. Oh, but you need to know about blah, blah, blah about Rabbi Steve. You need to know blah, blah, blah about this other person. Whatever the leader is. By the way, this isn't just here. Every congregation you've ever been a part of had this problem. Everyone that you will go and be a part of if you leave here will have this problem. Don't kid yourself. We will never have a president. You'll never have a governor. You'll never have a mayor. You'll never have a senator that if you were to listen to people talk about, they won't start spreading something. Oh, people don't like Trump because of blah, blah, blah. They're going to say, look, they're already attacking Biden. They're already attacking. If you are a public figure, you are going to be attacked. Some of it may be legitimate, some of it not. That's not the point necessarily. The point is that there will be attacks, and there will always be some of it that's not legitimate. And by legitimate, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It means that it may not be relevant if it happened or not. Every one of you lived a life where you did stuff that happened that really you would rather no longer affect the way people look at you. Everybody's that way. So what happens when you have people come to you and they want to spread something? Well, first of all, you got to ask yourself, is there, okay, you already asked them the question, hey, have you addressed this with the person, etc. And by the way, if they say yes, don't accept that answer. Ask them what that looked like. Because I've had people claim they've addressed me about stuff and somebody said, oh yeah, they said they addressed you, and they never did. We never sat down and had that conversation. It may have been a Facebook message or an email that I never saw, some other thing, but I can promise you that you cannot just trust that they said they've addressed it with me or whoever the leader is. I'm going to use me as the example just assume that means all leadership, okay? But since this is our group and our situation, so you hear something and you say to them, look, did you address it? And then you ask them, well, when? How did that look? How did that go? Did you address it? Because we're told in Matthew 18 that there's a protocol for this. You go to the person. Then if that doesn't work, you bring witnesses. Then you say to them, okay, fine, did you bring witnesses to witness the conversation you had with the leader? Did you go through the protocol in Matthew 18? Nobody does. It just never gets played out. It's shameful in that way. Okay, then what you need to do is you have to ask yourself a question. The person who's coming to me, do they have an axe to grind? Do they have an issue? Are they biased in some way? Because it almost always is from people that have left or are in the process of leaving, trying to get more people to journey with them. The leaders here in the book of Numbers 13 here, the leaders here saw the Anakim, saw the big stuff, saw the walls. They didn't want to go in, and they wanted the people to see the same thing they saw, so the people wouldn't want to go in, so that the leadership could be usurped, and they could be then picked maybe as leaders, and they can go do something else. So there's the problem. So you have to ask yourself, where's the bias here? And when you hear stuff from other people, there are people, you can't believe the stuff people are saying. You can't even make stuff up like this. Okay? I'll give you an example. One of the things going around is that we have a camera over the offering box watching and recording everybody that goes to it, and then we go back in the room and watch the video to see who's putting offerings in so that we can decide who we give benevolence to or not and all these other things. You know what? When I heard this, the first thing I did was I called up David, who's our operations director, and I said, do we have a camera? And he said, yes, we have one in the building. It's actually over Manny's head so that it watches the entire room in case somebody broke in here and caused a problem in our building. It's for security, and it is not over the offering box. It's filming the entire service so that we can see if something happened in here, we'd have it on recording. Oh, but rumors spreading that we're actually recording the offering box. Okay, you do understand that we open the box, and most of what goes in the box is in the form of a check or an envelope with a person's name on it. We know who's putting in the box. We don't need a camera to figure that out. So dumb. Oh, but what about all the loose change? You know what? I'll tell you right now, the loose change every week, when we used to have a full service, never amounted to more than $20, $30, generally speaking. People generally put it in an envelope with their name on it. It was the only time it was ever bigger than that was probably a guest that came in and they were out of town and they dropped some just cash in the box. But 90% of the time, it's not enough to be like a big deal. And by the way, those that are not putting in the box are generally the ones who we end up giving benevolence to, who end up needing the help, etc. So I don't know what you think there's an advantage of, but this is the Lashon hara stuff that's going on out there, and people are listening and buying into it without asking questions. Are you asking questions about how this actually works? No. But you're starting this, and then what you do is worse. Worse than hearing it from the leaders, worse than you then believe it and spread it yourself. This causes peace to leave the whole group. Oh, the things people say. And the way it spreads. And money is the biggest one. Money is absolutely the biggest issue, right? Oh, ministries are going to take advantage of money and abuse money and everything else. You know what? I have a very nice house. I'm not going to be like those ministries that say, with their $1,000 suits and about. I have a very nice house. I worked hard for that very nice house for 40 years of my life of working. I lived in an apartment most of my life until I could afford the house. I didn't just all of a sudden take all the money out of the offering box and stick it in my pocket so I could buy a house. But this seems to be what people think when they start spreading things about ministries. I get a salary. So does Manny, so does Marty, so does David Hayes, so does our accountant, these are all people that work on the staff. They get salaried. That's how I get paid. We use the money in the box to pay for the building, which we're now painting, which it needed, to pay for the rent, to pay for the chairs people are sitting in, to pay for the cameras that you're all watching this live stream on, to pay the salaries of everybody that's on the staff, including the academy staff, the teachers that we pay to teach the children in the academy. But somehow it's going around that I take all the money and put it in my pocket. You need to know, this again has to do with peace. We went through a full outside audit before buying this building. We went through a full outside accounting firm's audit that the bank requested for 3 years of our everything in order to get approved for this building purchase. We went through an extensive audit previous to that to get the standing with the government so that we could be approved as an assembly of congregations to get the tax benefits of that. We've been fully audited. If I was doing whatever they're accusing me of, we would never have gotten approved for anything. We hired a full-time accounting person, okay, to make sure that all the money things is handled correctly. And we go above and beyond to make sure. And I have to tell you something, mistakes happen. There have been times, not many, 2 or 3, where I used the wrong credit card to buy something. And you can be sure that the accounting person told me, hey, this thing was purchased, and I immediately wrote a check and took care of that. Because that can happen when you have 3 or 4 different cards in your wallet. So mistakes can happen, but we fix those things. I'm not saying that was ever an accusation. I'm just trying to tell you, these things can happen, they're caught, and they're fixed. And we're talking small amounts of money, $30 for something on Amazon. I used the wrong card. Okay? But people will say, now, by the way, you need to understand this from the other people's point of view. You do understand, hopefully, from Scripture, that I can do whatever I want with the money. That's Scripture. You don't see anywhere where the Levites are giving an audit to the Israelites of everything they ever did with the stuff they were given. They don't give an annual statement. They don't give any kind of accounting. It was given to Yahweh, to the Levites. But I don't do any of that. Okay? If you talk to the staff, you'll find out that I am somewhat paranoid to make sure we're above board with our finances. And I spend very little of the money, by the way. The audiovisual team spends most of it. And well spent, don't get me wrong, for the equipment that we need to do this broadcast. But if you notice, we don't ever ask you for the money. We don't say, well, we got this big project in phase 1. Can we... Anybody tired of hearing the phase 1, phase 2 donation solicitations from their ministries? And by the way, we are going through a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 with our audiovisual stuff. You just don't know about it because we're just doing it as it becomes available financially. We are not asking for anybody to participate in it. But these are the accusations that could be out there. All kinds of stuff that's out there. So where are you going to be when you're in the camp? Are you going to be those looking for new leadership? Oh, these leaders that they were to pick anyway would have been failing in the vetting anyway, because at some point, all you need to have is somebody not like something you did. And guess what? Now you're mud, and they're going to find ways to throw mud at everybody about you. There's going to be mud. You need to understand that. People will say that we charge interest. We don't charge interest. We give out benevolence. And by the way, we do have 2 types of benevolence. And this is important stuff, I guess, to get it out there. We have 2 types of benevolence. Benevolence, that's true benevolence. In other words, people that say, I need, and we give, and we don't expect anything back. We have others that say, I know this is, I guess I should stop. Let me backtrack. There are things that you need to know as a ministry you cannot do for people unless you're going to do it for everybody. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you are struggling to pay this month's power bill or rent, and I give you that money to cover that up and just give it to you, not ask you to pay it back, I will have to do that for everybody. That is the government requirement, by the way, in our status as well. But that's integrity. So some people have asked, hey, I'm not asking for benevolence, but can you help us just to get through? We'll give it back next week. And we've done some of that. And most of the time they do give it back. But we have helped people to move here, to do things like fix their house before they could move here because they couldn't get the house sold because of broken pipes and things. Those people never paid us back. And people will, actually, if you ask the staff here, they'll tell you I'm generous, actually, overly generous, to a fault. Oh, but people think that I'm not. They think, oh, you won't give people, you won't help people. No, I didn't help you necessarily if I didn't help you. And by the way, most of the people saying this have been helped. I know who a lot of this is coming from, and these are all people that actually took money and then left. That is a fact. You can ask the leadership and the staff, and they will tell you they took the money and then quit the ministry and never gave it back. People that were given money to help them as a short term, and there was no interest charged. There was no interest charged. Now, I was stupid. I'm going to admit I was stupid. But it was because I had a heart to fix things for people. But I was stupid. I knew there were things that the ministry couldn't do, but I wanted to help the people anyway. So I, on my own, helped some people. Now, in that agreement to help those people, I said, look, I'm going to be helping people, and you're one of them. And what I would ask is that you consider giving a percent above when you pay back what I'm giving you to help offset the ability to help other people and to offset the people that will end up not paying me back. Now, you can call that interest if you want, but that's not the ministry doing it. You want to blame anybody? That was me. And by the way, more than half of what I gave never came back and probably won't. Okay? Just so you know. And we're talking thousands of dollars here. And I'm not complaining. I gave the money knowing, and that's why I told people, if I gave you $100 to help you with this short-term problem that the ministry really couldn't help you with, I would ask, did you give me back $110 to offset the people that will never give me money back? And so they did. The few that did. And they were mostly the small ones. And I had people here telling me, Rabbi, you made a mistake. You should never have started lending people money, giving people money, or trying to help people because it's only going to blow up in your face. And it did. And now I'm being accused of stuff. It's stupid. You need to find out that most of the people I gave money to took it and never gave it back. And that came out of my pocket. That did not come out of MTOI. It didn't come out of MTOI funds. Didn't come out of MTOI or Beth Shalom checks. The people that got MTOI and Beth Shalom checks, half of them walked off with the money, never paid it back either, but they were never told that there was any kind of a fee or interest or anything else, ever. So if you hear that, they're lying. And you can ask any of the staff, not just me. Now, some of it was done when Robert was here, and so I guess you could ask him, but he knows that we authorize monies for people to help them so they could move here because they needed some help to fix something they didn't have the budget for, whatever. Okay? And that was promised to be paid back, and it's still been promised to be paid back. Even after they left, they said, we're leaving, but we absolutely were still going to pay back. And it's been 2 years, we haven't seen a penny. Okay? And I'm not complaining. This is not a complaint. This is a reality you need to understand because you're going to hear these things. Don't just listen to me. If you don't believe me, call and ask David Hayes, who's the director of operations. Call and ask Stacia Hayes, she's our accounting person. And find out what's the truth. Okay, the truth is that we, like all ministries, have been taken advantage of. And we're not upset about that. We knew they're going in. That is going to happen. We do not hold any ill against those that have done that, unless they're spreading the lies about it. That I have a problem with. You took our money and left. Yah is going to take care of that. You'll reap what you sow. I don't care. We do not have a financial struggle to pay the bills and do the things that ministry we have to do, regardless of the people that have taken advantage of us. Okay? But what's on them is the reaping and sowing they're going to have to deal with. I feel bad for that. They're going to, and they continue to stay financially challenged and broke because of the way they're doing things. And they wonder. So again, this comes back to how are you going to be influenced or not? You know, we had a saying back in the multi-level marketing days of being SNIOPed. Are you susceptible? S-N-I-O-P. Susceptible to the negative influences of other people. How susceptible are you? You're going to hear stuff. There's stuff being said about every leader all over the place all the time. How do you respond to that? If you take it and pass it along, now you're really in some trouble. You shouldn't even accept it, first of all. You should make sure to vet it. And then if it turns out that you then took it and looked into it and whatever's true, then you may need to respond to it personally. But why would you spread something? There is a format for these things. If they're really, I'll tell you what, you guys have to understand this. If you really thought I was doing anything wrong, you should be going to Rabbi Tom. You should bring it to the attention of David Hayes, the operations director. You could, if you want to, bring it to any of the leaders that come to the leadership council that are part of the affiliate program, and they would address it. I can promise you that we have full transparency. But that's not what you're going to hear. And by the way, when I say full transparency, those leaders know exactly how much money comes in here, exactly what we're spending, exactly what's going on, because I share those things with the leadership and they share with me what's going on with them, so we have transparency to help each other. This is critically important to me. And you need to understand that. And this is stealing the peace in the body, and it's on purpose by those who want to destroy where they've left. They leave and they want to take you from here. They want to convince you to leave here to go where they are. That is always the case. Let us go back to Egypt. Let us go back to, let's go to this other place. Well, you left other places ready to come here. Look, I want to just address two things that should be the only important things. Really the only important things, okay? Number one, are you receiving what you need? Are you getting the counsel when you call? Are you getting the teaching from the microphone? That's number one, okay? Are you getting and receiving what you need? And the second part of it is, are you giving what you're giving to Yahweh and not to a ministry? That's all that matters. Are you getting what you're supposed to get, and are you doing what you're supposed to do? And don't worry about so much what that ministry is doing with every penny, because I'm not going to give you an itemized disclosure of everything we spend money on. The board has that. By the way, we have a board. The leadership council understands what we're doing. So there is accountability. But you're going to hear reports. That's what this is all about. What do you do when you hear a slanderous, in other words, a report meant to slander, to hurt, to harm a reputation of somebody else? What do you do with that? I know what you do. You get on Facebook and make posts right away. That's what most of you do. Stop that. Okay, you need to stop that. You need to knock that off. That is the wrong way to handle this. You should not do that. Okay? I find it exhausting to have to do what I just did. I shouldn't have to do that. I found it so exhausting that you know what I was going to do? I did this a few months back. I almost was going to do it again. I was going to walk up here and say, you know what? I quit. You don't want to support this. You want to talk badly about me. You want to listen to people talking badly about me. That's fine. If you don't need what I have to offer, then either A, go somewhere else, or I'll just go somewhere else. Let me make it easier. I'll go somewhere else. You have to understand, I don't need this. I have the ability and skill sets in any economy to make a living. Okay? I have enough variety of skill sets that I can find lucrative work and pay my bills and take care of my family in any economy, under any condition, virtually or in face-to-face situations. I don't need this. Okay? I don't do this for a living. I have the ability to make actually a lot more than I make here. A lot more. Okay? That's not bragging. It's telling you the truth. Okay? I can work a lot less and make a whole lot more doing other things. So I don't do this because I have to. Now, do I get paid decently? Yes, I do. Decently. I can promise you, though, you may think it may, if you knew the number, you might go, well, that sounds like a pretty big number. Well, actually, you know what? If you had to do what I had to do, you would know that I'm underpaid. You cannot pay me enough for what I have to do. To deal with the stuff that I have to deal with, my family being under attack, my wife having to deal with her husband always being under attack. Think about it. If you think about, so you guys don't understand what I do. You know what I should do? I'm going to put this out. Maybe next week when we do the Q&A, I'll put this out there. Job description, apply now for what I do. And I'm going to tell you what's expected of you. And what that job description is all about. So you want to apply for the job? This is what you can expect. This is what the job is expecting of you. And this is what's going to happen to you and what you're going to have to do for your 168 hours a week. Okay, you take out your, 50-something hours of sleep, and now the rest of that is going to be full of that stuff. And you're going to have to try to squeeze family time and other things into there. I don't quit because I don't work for you. And I don't quit because, I joke when I say I quit. There's no quit because I do this because he's asked me to do it. He has pulled me into this position. And I appreciate and honor that. Okay? And I take what I have thrown at me because he has told me, this is what I need you to do. He needs me to do it. He wants me to do this. So I choose to listen to that. What I don't listen to is all the noise that comes out of the rest of you. Okay? I'm not saying that in any condescending way. If I listened to the noise, I would be depressed, I'd be frustrated, I'd be hurt, I'd be damaged emotionally, and et cetera, and I'd quit. This is not a job for the faint at heart. And so you would quit too. But so where does that fit in as we wrap this up for today? And we'll go back to chapter 14 next week. Well, either next week or the week after, depending if I do the Q&A next week. I think we will. All right? Where does that put you? You are the front line, not me. I shouldn't have to address everybody out there that's spewing nonsense. You guys are the ones who they're bringing it to. You shut that down. And if you don't know if it's something that should be shut down because you're thinking that maybe it's true, well, then you contact somebody that would know whether it's true. And that's not another person who's spewing the same vomit. Come ask me. Come ask the other leadership. Find out what's true and what's not true. Actually, sit in the room and realize there's no camera over the box. It's over Manny's head in the corner. Okay? Because that's a spot where you can see the whole room. And especially the two entrances. So if anybody comes in the room, we'll know. It's a security camera. Some of you, okay, last thing. Some of you may say, well, but Rabbi, we don't think it's appropriate that you know who gives what. Where did you get that from? You know what, you're fortunate. I was going to say lucky, but we don't deal with luck. You are fortunate that I don't require you scripturally to hand it to me directly and confess that you didn't mess with it. Absolutely, I would know who's giving what. Oh, we don't think that you should know who's giving what. Do I ever sound like I'm influenced by anybody by how much they give or not give? Oh, well, we think that's how you decide who you give benevolence to. No. We give benevolence actually to people we shouldn't even give benevolence to, because I generally try to say yes to everybody. That's my heart. I try to help everybody if possible. And you could ask the other leaders who are part of that decision-making, like David Hayes and Stacia Hayes, who are part of the accounting team, or Rabbi Tom, and they will tell you that I have given more than I should and approved benevolence to people that I never should have. But you need to get the facts. Okay, that's what you need to understand. But as far as me knowing, you have to know that there's no Judas taking anything out of that box. If anybody's taking it and doing anything wrong with it, it would be me, and we have accountability to know that that is not the case. Okay? That is not the case, and we have that absolutely safeguarded. But just be happy I don't require you to hand it to me face to face and declare that you haven't messed with it. That's scriptural. Okay, so let's just get past all of the petty stuff that you grew up with out of churchianity and all the other bad experiences you had. Enough is enough. Amen? Father, we come before you. And Father, we are struggling to have peace in a world not yours. And we know that a lot of that disturbance of the peace has to do with our emotional way that we deal with or don't deal with leadership and the things that are going on. And we can see how the reports can come from people that have been or considered to be leaders, and we could be susceptible to the influences of those people. And Father, we just want to learn the right way to handle these things so that we can have peace. Peace that we know is what you desire in your body for sure, even though it's in a world that's not yours, and the world does things the way they do, but we should not be doing as they do. We know that we should be doing it as you have instructed, and Father, we ask that you would help us to know our place in that, our role in that, when faced with these kind of slanderous and evil reports. That, Father, we can recognize how that quickly disturbs peace. You know, one of those reports came recently to my wife, and it completely disturbed her peace, as you can understand as it would. But then what do we do next? Well, she did the right thing. She called me, and I restored her peace. And so, Father, we ask that you help us to know that we can go to the right people to have our peace restored, so that we don't get involved in fomenting the Lashon hara that causes a stealing of peace. It steals peace. Lashon hara takes away peace. And so, Father, we just want to ask now that you in your mercy would forgive us our participation in these things in the past. Help us to never do it again, and help us to respond correctly when faced with it in the future. So, Father, we want to now come to you very humbly and thank you and praise you and give you all glory in all things as we move through the process of transforming into the image of your son Yeshua. It's in his name that we come before you now, and it's in his name that we ask all things. And together we say, Amen, the Amen.